Hey, how's it going, everybody? It's RC Maxfield here for the Back to 12 podcast and coming to you live a day before Texas Tech looks to solidify themselves as a top 3 team in the Big 12 with their potential win over TCU. We will preview that matchup. We will also discuss, hey, what did Grant McCasland say about D5 and that ankle injury that he sustained in the previous game for the Red Raiders, and really an ugly win against Oklahoma State, but you'll take ugly wins because, well, they're still wins, right? At the end of the day, we'll discuss that. We'll also look at the latest metrics for your Red Raiders as they change each and every day, and where Texas Tech is slowly but surely solidifying themselves in the NCAA tournament. Something that a lot of people probably were panicking about after one game in the UCF game early on in Big 12 play. Well, as early on as you can get, that was the Big 12 opener. But we'll look at where Texas Tech stands after, well, last night's thriller of a game out in Tucson between number 3 Iowa State and Arizona. And then we'll have a live Q&A as well. As always, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Get involved, like the video, and when I say get involved, let me know your answer to this question. Texas Tech is a top what team in the Big 12 right now? Let me know. Like, don't just go off standings. Like, you guys watch college basketball probably just as much as I do, right? What does your gut say in terms of Texas Tech is a blank team in the Big 12 in terms of top 4? Top 2, top 6? Let me know in the comments where you think the Red Raiders currently stand in the current landscape of the Big 12, and we'll be getting a couple shout outs here on the channel as well. Let's see who we got. John, UCF is a good basketball team, top 5, not top 3. I like it. Dylan, top 4. Terry, top 3. Zach, 5, probably. All good answers right there. We'll go over that and much more here in just a little bit because, well, there's quite a bit to discuss on that front. But first, let's take a look at TCU in this matchup for the Red Raiders as we're changing it up a little bit here on the display. Some of y'all have said, hey, we want to see more of the stats. They were too small on the other screen. I hear you. We take criticism well here on this channel, okay? This is the ESPN breakdown because let's face it, right now, the odds have not been released. We'll have to wait for tomorrow for that to actually happen. This game is set for 6 p.m. on a nationally televised platform for the Red Raiders on ESPN2 against their, well, East Texas rivals. I believe, quote me or correct me in the comments if I'm wrong here, I believe it's a black and red out where it's a half and half type thing, where I believe the student side of the USA is asked to wear black while the other side is asked to wear red. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong. Either way, TCU comes into this matchup 10-9. The Red Raiders are one of the hottest teams in the Big 12, not named the Houston Cougars, and they are 6-2 and looking to solidify themselves as a top 3 team in the Big 12, at least tied for 3rd in the Big 12, headed into the month of February, where things will get more difficult after this. As you can see, according to the matchup predictor right there, Texas Tech is nearly an 86%, has an 86% chance of winning this game. The names you need to know are really the same names that they've had for a while. I mean, Reynolds, he's relatively new to TCU, but you've got the big there from Kansas that transferred into Fort Worth. And a guy that's really solid. He's one of the better bigs, I think. He's inconsistent, but he's one of the better bigs in the Big 12. He leads TCU in rebounding. You see JT Toppin leading the Red Raiders in scoring as well as rebounding with Elijah Hawkins at 6.1 assists per game, and he's coming off of easily his worst performance as a Red Raider against Oklahoma State. When it comes to the team stats, as you can see on your screen right there, TCU don't score too much, people. They don't. It's typically bad, and let me know, chat, if I'm off base here. Typically, you don't want to give up more points than you score, really, in any game. But that's what TCU is doing this year. They allow opponents to score 68.3 points per game, while only scoring 67.3. Not great. not great in that regard, and they're about to face off against arguably the best offense in the Big 12 as the Red Raiders come in averaging nearly 82 points per game, just a shade under it at 81.9. Texas Tech, an issue that I thought they would have this year would be rebounding. They're actually a pretty solid rebounding team. I thought Fetty has been way better than I projected him to be. And I think a lot of that has to do with just you have two guys down there that are hyper aggressive. Do I wish they were a little bit more physical in JT and Fetty? Sure. But overall, I think they've done a phenomenal job at attacking the glass on a consistent basis, really. Texas Tech, obviously one of the better passing teams in the Big 12. TCU, not. It is a lot of ISO ball for Jamie Dixon's crew out in Fort Worth, as they are not even averaging 12 assists per game. They do get after it defensively in terms of active hands and blocking the ball, pretty similar to Texas Tech on that front. But you look at the last 5 games for TCU, they lost at home to Utah by 8 points. And I'll be honest with you, that game was not that close. I watched it. It really wasn't. And then they go, after losing to Utah, a team that Texas Tech beat by 20 plus on the road, they go and beat Baylor. Then they lose to Kansas, understandably so. And then they just get absolutely shellacked out in Orlando. I don't know if Jamie Dixon's crew, went to Disney, Universal. Maybe they did that whole thing at Disney or at Epcot where you go to like 11 countries and you taste a taste of each country and you just get absolutely hammered. Maybe they did that the day before the game. I don't know, but they clearly didn't show up for this one, losing to the Golden Knights, or I should just say Knights now, 85-58. As you can see, Texas Tech, since the new year has begun, has only lost 1 game, and it is to the number 3 team in the country in the Iowa State Cyclones. And honestly, it's a game they should have won. I think we all know that by now, but you do commend this squad for bouncing back after that type of loss where it was like, hey, you really handed them that game, if we're being honest. But instead of, getting down and, kind of counting themselves out, they go out and they win 4 straight, something that was very desperately needed in a stretch for Texas Tech, where this is the last of the 5-game stretch that Texas Tech needed to go at least 4-1 at worst. But they have an opportunity to go 5-0, and that would set them up for great success going into February. Now, as I get back on the screen here, I think we're going to be watching this game in great detail, mostly for the sheer fact of, do you have D5, Darrion Williams, right? And Coach McCaslin discussing things with the local media in terms of previewing this game and really trying to get a lay of the land when it came down to, hey, what can you expect from TCU? He said that D5, after suffering an ankle injury, really looked like he tweaked his ankle against Oklahoma State with about 5-6 minutes left. Don't quote me on that, but it was later in the second half. He did not return. Grant McCaslin said that they're going to take it cautious with this. They're going to be a little bit more patient, and he is going to be listed as a game time decision against the TCU Horned Frogs. Now, in my opinion, you should still beat the crap out of TCU. I mean, TCU is just not a good basketball team. They're just not, and that's no disrespect to Jamie Dixon. I actually think Jamie Dixon, I'm probably in the minority when it comes to Texas Tech fans. I think Jamie Dixon's a pretty damn solid coach, right, at the collegiate level. But this team is ass in Fort Worth. You should beat them. And even without D5, you should probably be close to 10-point favorites, if not more, in this game. Would I take TCU? I don't know, but it doesn't matter. You have to be cautious with D5 because, again, if you're Texas Tech, and let's say you win this basketball game, right? You're 7-2 in the Big 12, okay? That's a pretty good spot to be in, okay? You go into the month of February where you got to go face off against arguably the best team in the country, not named the Auburn Tigers and the Houston Cougars, which is probably going to be a loss. You're probably going to be 6-7 point underdogs in that matchup, if not more, okay? Then you come back home, you face Baylor, and then you go out to Tucson. And how about Caleb Love, by the way? I don't know if y'all paid attention or stayed up late to watch that game out in Tucson last night with Iowa State in Arizona. Caleb Love was 1 for 10 from 3. His second made 3 of the ball game was a 55-footer to send it to overtime. Unreal type stuff. Anyway, I digress. That's your next 4 games if you include TCU tomorrow night. Okay, so you have to think about it from that perspective. where do you want to be? You got to be smart because you're going to have a couple of ebbs and flows here where this 3-game stretch after the TCU game, it's going to be rough. That is a tough stretch to play. Would you rather have D5 closer to 100% later on in the year, or would you rather risk it right now? With the position you're in, you should handle business against TCU. That would make it 7-2. I would probably hold him out until you can get as close to 100% as possible, whether that's the home game against Baylor or even after Arizona, just for the sheer fact of Texas Tech has some really, really good chances to make some noise in this conference. They're a really good basketball team, people, and one that I think can make some really, really big noise. I mean, I haven't changed my stance on this year in the sense of I think this team is a second weekend team. They are that talented. And so D5 has to be as close to 100% as possible for you to reach that ceiling, right? And you have plenty of guys that you feel comfortable with because you think about it, D5 has not been playing well recently. Now, that's not to say that he hasn't made an impact because defenses do have to account for him when he's on the floor. But if you look at his statistics and really just watch him in the games in terms of being efficient and productive, he really hasn't been. And that's not a diss to D5. It's just, hey, even great players go through slumps. So let's get him as close to 100% as possible if you're Texas Tech. Potentially sit him out against TCU. If he's close to 100%, play him. But don't rush him back. Your season and your dreams of what you could potentially do that are realistic, by the way. I think it's very realistic you could make the second weekend if you're Texas Tech, are still very much on the table if you're the Red Raiders. So why not play it smart, sit him out a little bit, and then, really ramp him up after maybe Arizona or even the Baylor game at home, right? Play it smart with D5. I just don't know if I see him playing tomorrow night. Again, that is 100% me speculating after what Grant McCasland said in terms of, hey, we're going to take it slow. He's a game time decision. And you got to remember this too about D5. This isn't the first ankle injury or ankle sprain that he has had this year in terms of him tweaking his ankle. He's done it 2 or 3 times, okay? So maybe this one is just, adding on to that, and this is the quote-unquote straw that breaks the camel's back in terms of, hey, he needs a little bit more time to recover from this one. And if that's the case, fine by me. You still have a great team surrounding him, and it wouldn't shock me at that point if you see really, I would suspect at that point you start Fetty, right? I think you would probably start Fetty because your best lineup or best combo in terms of just having 2 guys on the floor, really the past 2 weeks has been when Fetty and JT Toppin are on the floor together. They have become a really, really good, I don't want to throw the word elite out, but really, really good front court, most notably defensively. It's not, a coincidence for Texas Tech that their defense has gotten so much better when those guys have played larger minutes together. Okay. Then you can have the Kerwin Walton, who it was good to see a couple of baskets go in for him, right? Then you can start Chance. Then you can start Elijah Hawkins. And then that doesn't really put the pressure on a true freshman in Christian Anderson to come in and, potentially be asked to do more. I think it'd be human nature for anybody, let alone a true freshman, like, okay, now I'm in the starting lineup. I got to take my game up a notch. That's not the case. Let him stay on the bench, right? Still play valuable minutes. He's still going to play 20-plus minutes a game easily. And then you have Kevin Overton off the bench as well. You go down from about 8 guys to 7, and then maybe you mix in a little bit of a Meli Elahu as well in there. But just be smart with D5. They obviously will be, but I would not be shocked whatsoever if he does not play against TCU due to that ankle injury that he sustained against Oklahoma State. All right, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button. Let me know what you think about the new setup here. I know this is a little different from what we've done before. Do you like the rundown over here? You like the logo? Let me know. Let me know if we need to switch it up. I'm all about hearing you guys' thoughts. This is a collaborative effort here. I tend to like the new layout, but let me know in the comments how y'all are feeling about this layout, if we want to switch it up anymore at all, or anything like that. Let's get to the chat real quick. Zach says, only reason I say 5 is we need to beat a top 3 team. If we won on Saturday, I say top 3. Yeah, I don't know, man. Saturday in Houston is the least confident I feel in Texas Tech winning a basketball game this year. A single basketball game, like an individual basketball game. I have little to no confidence they win that game. And it's not because I don't think Texas Tech is good. I think it might be like it changes every year almost. Houston might be the hardest place to play in the Big 12, specifically with that defense and how damn good that team is. Isaac asked, what happened to Micah Peavy? He's at Georgetown now, I believe. Could be wrong on that, but I believe he's at Georgetown now, if I'm not mistaken. Dita Youngin says top 3 to top 5. I think that's more than fair. John says that's doing Epcot right, homie. Yeah, no, I mean, I've never actually done that, but I've had a friend that does it, or did it, I should say. I think there's 11 stops. Don't quote me on that. Maybe 10. I know he got to 8, and then he was like, yeah, I'm out. I can't be doing this. I don't know if it's the best look to be walking around Disney World drunk. Probably not, but who knows? You know, it's your money. Do what you want if you ain't hurting anybody. That Iowa State game yesterday. Yeah, Renee, that game was crazy. I did not stay up to watch it, but I woke up to the group chat going absolutely nuts about it. Just phenomenal game. It just proves to you that, you know, this year the Big 12 from top to bottom is not the best league in America, but they're at worst too. But each and every night, much like on the gridiron, anything can happen, right? Like, it's hard as hell to win on the road in the Big 12, but these good teams like Iowa State, I mean, Iowa State won that basketball game, and then Caleb Love threw up a prayer, and then they lost it. I mean, it was wild. It's wild for sure. Houston is better and can close. Tech struggles to close games. The funny thing is, if you look at their closing metrics, Texas Tech, again, I'm being picky here, obviously, so take it with a grain of salt if you want. If you take away that Iowa State game where they just botched it at the free throw line, and I understand you can't do that, but just hear me out, Texas Tech actually does a pretty damn good job at closing games. Now, are they elite? No, but they're closer to very good than average, if that makes sense. Like, they're actually pretty damn good at closing games. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those deals where I think the Iowa State game kind of skewed people, and rightfully so, when Elijah Hawkins, a guy that shoots 90% from the free throw line, misses a free throw to go up 4, and that would have been the game. And then Chance McMillan misses a free throw to go up 3, and then obviously we know what happened with Iowa State in that last second layup there. You know, it's just one of those deals where they're a really good team, Texas Tech is, at closing games out. It's just, again, you get skewed a little bit, and some of those missed shots late that D5 had against St. Joe's, and then obviously the one in overtime against Iowa State, I think skew it a little bit, but you never should have gotten to overtime against Iowa State if you just even remotely handled business in any kind of capacity, but unfortunately you didn't. Let's get to the latest metrics, though, shall we? I think everybody likes this. And I will say this, before we get into the metrics, again, let me know, Texas Tech is a top blank team in the Big 12. I mean, a lot of y'all have already let me know in the comments. I appreciate that. And while you're at it, you might as well like the video as well. It's a 100% free channel. Can't beat that. Going live at least once a week. And by the way, I will say this. We got to the benchmark that we needed on the previous live that we had here on the channel, where I said if we got to a certain amount of likes on the video, we would start doing post-game lives here on the channel. So we will start doing that, not this week. I'm sorry, have a couple things going on, but we will have a post-game live here on the YouTube channel, starting with the Baylor game next week for Texas Tech, where we will have a live chat going, subscriber only. So you're going to want to subscribe. You might as well turn the notification bell on, because I promise you're going to want to be a part of it. And then we're just going to let it fly. Hopefully we're talking about a win. And I'll be honest with you. If y'all have paid attention to me over on Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it, and my post-game spaces over there, you know that they get lively. They get lively. So you're going to want to tune into that. I can promise you that. But again, let me know. Texas Tech is the top blank team in the Big 12. Just simply let me know in the comments and get a shout out here on the channel. All right, let's jump into the latest metrics as I pop up KenPom onto your screen. As you can see, the Red Raiders are number 11, according to KenPom, in the country, which is really not surprising in the sense of a lot of the metrics. Now, it's super interesting from this standpoint. I put it out there, and I want to make sure I get this stat right, so forgive me for looking down at this, because it's a super interesting stat from the standpoint of really, and this was as before yesterday, I should say, the games yesterday. So let me make sure I get this stat right for you guys, because it's one that typically kind of tells you who has a legitimate shot to win the national championship. And so when you look at it, 95.9% of teams have ranked in the top 22 offensively for KenPom since 2001. So let me repeat that, make it a little bit more clear, because I did a terrible job of laying that out for you guys. Since 2001, 95.9% of national champions in college basketball have had a top 22 offense, while 90.9% have had a top 35 defense. The teams that have both a top 22 offense and top 30 defense right now, according to KenPom, are as followed. And this was before yesterday's game, so forgive me for the non-updated data, but you're going to get the point. Duke, Auburn, Houston, Iowa State, Florida, Purdue, Texas Tech, Michigan, Arizona, Mississippi State, Maryland, Michigan State. Those are the 12 teams as of right now, basically a couple of days before we head into, February and really start hunkering down a little bit, have the best chances to win the national title. Your Red Raiders are firmly in that mix. Now, it's interesting because we're going to move on over to the net now, and this is updated before tonight's game, and there's plenty of them in the Big 12. You can see Texas Tech actually moved down a spot after Arizona got a really big win against a top 6 team in the net in the Iowa State Cyclones in overtime. Arizona passes Texas Tech. It is what it is there. They have one more quad win, so that makes sense. But Texas Tech comes in as the 12th best team in the country. So what would that mean? As of right now, in theory, Texas Tech would be a 3 seed, according to the committee, if they went off of the net rankings. Now, obviously, other things can apply, and other things will apply moving forward. But as of right now, Texas Tech is probably on that 4 or 5 line, if I had to guess. Right now, the interesting point, too, is there's a lot of metrics that the committee will look at. This is one that I don't think that they look a ton at, but it's one that I think is interesting from the standpoint of maybe people should take it a little bit more seriously, if that makes sense, as I switch it on over to your screen. And that's the Basketball Power Index, BPI, okay? Is this the be-all, end-all? Absolutely not. It is not the end-all, be-all by any stretch of the imagination, but Texas Tech is ranked as a top 15 team in the country, according to this here metric. No surprise, they've been top 15 in everything that we've seen so far. Now, when it comes to the Big 12, we've kind of talked about the standings already, and the Red Raiders a game behind right now in terms of how many Iowa State has played, as well as Arizona. Houston is set to play tonight. But the Red Raiders, if they win on Wednesday against the aforementioned TCU Horned Frogs, who you can see down there at 3-5, 5 games out of first, the Red Raiders will move up to a tie with Iowa State at 7-2, okay? So you think about it from that perspective, headed into the month of February, right? You would first and foremost have a matchup against a top 5 team in the country. I don't care if there's a number 6 next to Houston. They're a top 5 team in the country at worst, in my opinion. But the best team in the Big 12 in Houston from a standing standpoint, you would have a 1 versus 3 matchup in terms of the first team in the Big 12 and a tied for 3rd team in the Red Raiders playing on Saturday down in H-Town. Now, again, that loss isn't really going to hurt Texas Tech if they take one down in Houston, which they will be underdogs. I can promise you that, because Houston is just going nuclear right now. Everything was going right for them. I don't know if any of y'all saw what happened to them at Allen Fieldhouse this past Saturday, where they had a chance of winning of 0.4%. Not not 4%, 0.4%. Okay. It was 99.6% chance that Kansas was going to win. Houston was down 6 points with, I think, 17 seconds left, and they somehow won. Texas Tech legend Malik Wilson got him into overtime with a last-second three there. But overall, Houston's a really good team, and you have a chance to go up there and potentially get an upset on Saturday. But first, you got to beat TCU, and if you do, again, you're tied for third in the Big 12 headed into February. I don't think you could ask for more. Again, that Iowa State loss really hurts right now, if we're being honest, just because, again, you beat them and you just handed them the damn game, and credit to them for taking it and running with it, because that's what you're supposed to do. But overall, you're a really good basketball team. I think you're better than Kansas. I don't know if people will agree with me on that. I think Kansas is arguably the most overrated team, maybe in the country. They just whiffed on multiple guys in the portal, most notably A.J. Storr from Wisconsin, who was one of the highest paid guys in the portal and is averaging, I believe, less than 10 points. I think it's actually closer to 6 points for Kansas this year. He has just been an absolute unequivocal bust for the Jayhawks so far, which means when Texas Tech goes up to Allen Fieldhouse, he's probably scoring 30, because I'm talking all this mess right now. Anyway, I think Texas Tech is clearly the fourth best team in this conference. And I think that there is one of those deals where I understand they beat Arizona. Arizona is really good. I think it's a coin flip between Texas Tech and Arizona. The two best teams clearly ahead of the Red Raiders are Houston and Iowa State. And then I think you have to have the conversation, is Texas Tech the third best team in the Big 12? And I think if they even land between 3 and 5 in the Big 12 standings, which I think should be the expected outcome at this point for Texas Tech, they're going to be at worst a 5 seed in the NCAA tournament. Okay? They have everything that they need, as I get back on screen here, to really be one of those teams that makes a lot of noise. Now, again, health is going to be a big part of it. We've already discussed it. D5 could miss this game against TCU. And honestly, it really wouldn't shock me. And it's one of those deals where I kind of am expecting it and 100% okay with it, if that makes sense. But overall, you are a really good basketball team, and you have a very good chance to be 7-2. You should beat TCU on Wednesday, have a chance to go into February in the second best conference in America, 7-2, and really give yourself a little bit of wiggle room from the standpoint of, let's just say you go 1-2 and you just win the home game against Baylor in that first 3-game stretch you have to open up February, where you go down to Houston, as I mentioned, you play Baylor, and then you head out to Tucson. Let's just say you go 1-2, okay? You are still 8-4 in the conference. You're in a really good spot if you're Texas Tech at that point, because your schedule eases up a little bit if you're Texas Tech after that. Let me pull up the schedule real quick for you guys here, because after that stretch, you have a chance where you could legitimately win 4 in a row, okay? So, again, I'm not trying to – if anything, I know a lot of people were saying that Oklahoma State game was a trap game. I think this TCU game is a trap game for the sheer standpoint of you're looking ahead to this 3-game stretch that is absolutely brutal to begin February. But handle business against TCU, you're 7-2. Again, let's just say you go 1-2, you win your home game, you lose the 2 road games. I think that that's more than fair, right? You're 8-4, coming home to play Arizona State, and then you play Oklahoma State and TCU and West Virginia. At worst, in that 4-game stretch, you should go 3-1. Let's just say you do go 3-1. You're 11-5 with 4 games remaining. Okay? Let's just say you go 2-2 in those last 4 games. I think very reasonable right there. You win 13 games in the conference. You go 13-7. 13-7 is going to, at worst, get you in the top 5 of the Big 12 this year. Okay? And if you're in the top 5 of the Big 12, I think you're a 5 seed at worst. And you have plenty of opportunities to really go on a couple of runs here. And let's just say, for example, they lose to Houston, but they beat Baylor and they beat Arizona on the road. And then you have that 4-game stretch. You're looking at a team that really could finish second in the Big 12 at that point. You're that good of a team. It's just going to come down to health if you're Texas Tech. But this first half of, well, not first half, the first week of February is critical for you to at least win one of those games, most notably at home against Baylor. And if you steal one on the road, hey, good for you guys. Got to take care of business against TCU, but then things really open up headed into really the week of Valentine's Day, where you're at home against Arizona State. That should be a win. You play at Oklahoma State. That should be a win. You should beat TCU, but you'll probably go 1-1 against Oklahoma State or TCU. But with the way Grant McCasland has these guys playing on the road, maybe you win 2 there. You should beat West Virginia at home without their best player in DeVries, the coach's kid, who is a stud. It sounds like he's going to be out for the year with a shoulder injury, but they do have a great player in Small. Maybe you beat Houston at home? Question mark. If you do, you probably lose on the road at Allen Fieldhouse, considering it's a hard place to win, right? But then you have Colorado and at Arizona State to close out the year. You should beat Colorado for sure handily. I think you might be close to 20-point favorites in that game. Colorado is just absolutely bad. And then you should beat Arizona State as well, but we'll see. Again, I think worst case scenario for Texas Tech in terms of Big 12 wins is 13. Looking at this remaining schedule here, you should beat TCU. Let's go 1-2 in those next 3 games. So you're 2-2. You should beat Arizona State. That's 3-2. You should beat Oklahoma State and TCU. That's 5-2. You should beat West Virginia. That's 6-2. Let's say you lose to Kansas or Houston and Kansas. Just say you lose both. That's 6-4. And you should beat Colorado and Arizona State. That's 8-4. That right there gets you to 14. Built in a little bit of wiggle room. 13 wins in the conference. I think that that's realistic. I think that that is very realistic for Texas Tech. Again, the key is going to be health, I should say. But they are very, very talented as Texas Tech, and the schedule lines up very, very well for the Red Raiders. All right, let's get to the Q&A here. What do we got? Renee said top 4. Okay. If D5 is out or even going forward, who would you want taking the final shot for Tech at the buzzer? I would want Chance McMillan. I would want Chance McMillan to shoot that last shot. I really would. Chance McMillan may be the most underappreciated, and I don't use this word lightly. If you watch the channel, you know I'm very hesitant to throw out words like this. Chance McMillan is a star. Okay, he's a star, right? He's one of the most efficient players in all of college basketball. And is he perfect? By no means. But he is a star on this Grant McCasland team, and he is your 3rd best player, right? That's why I'm so high on this team, is when you're healthy, Chance McMillan is your 3rd best player, and there's not a lot of teams in America that can guard JT Toppin or JT Toppin in D5, let alone JT Toppin D5 and Chance McMillan. Like, there's not a lot of teams that can do that. Okay, so yeah, definitely want Chance McMillan taking that last shot. Games versus Oklahoma State and TCU are never a given with Tech. Absolutely. That's why I think, build in a little bit of wiggle room there. They probably lose a game that they shouldn't at Oklahoma State or at TCU, if we're being honest. They should win. They're clearly more talented. But it is a Tech thing to do. It's tough to win on the road in general, right, though? That's just how it is. Diehard Texas Tech, I say we go 4-0 versus TCU and Oklahoma State. I think you should. You're clearly more talented than them. But it's difficult to win on the road. Just simple and plain, it is very difficult to win on the road in the Big 12. Just ask Iowa State. They lost to West Virginia, a team without their best player, who I just mentioned. They lost out there not too long ago. We go 1-1 against Houston. I think you could. It's going to be interesting. I think you'll probably end up being like an 8-9 point underdog at Houston, the more I think about it, if not even more. And you'll probably be a home underdog against Houston, if we're being honest, by like 2 or 3 points. That's what I expect anyway. 4 seed in March Madness, that from Diehard Texas Tech. John says 4-6. We finished 3rd, maybe 2nd. Yeah, or 14-6, excuse me. Yeah, I think that's the ceiling for the Red Raiders is 14-6. I think realistically it's 13-7, but don't hear what I'm not saying. I think 14-6 is clearly still on the table for Texas Tech. Technically 18-2 is because math, right? But I think 14-6 is kind of their ceiling. Hopefully they prove me wrong on that regard, but I think 13-7 is the most likely outcome in terms of their standing in those 20 games that, we haven't seen them play before. In terms of 20 games in league play is a first this year for every team. Again, real quick while I get a drink of water, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button if you want to be a part of the chat. Super simple. All you got to do is subscribe and let those questions fly. I'll probably go here for another 5 to 10 minutes. As long as the questions are coming in, we'll keep going. It's really that simple. Again, the big news for Texas Tech, though, today is Grant McCasland saying that star forward D5 will be a game-time decision after sustaining an ankle injury against Oklahoma State this past weekend, where the Red Raiders won in ugly fashion. But again, I'd much rather have an ugly win than an ugly loss, if you ask me. But Texas Tech still in really good shape as we've gone through, looked at the standings. All the key metrics have the Red Raiders as a top 15 team in the country. And I would not be surprised if tomorrow you see D5 take a game off. And I think Federico would be inserted into the starting lineup for the Red Raiders, as they have had a really, really good lineup, specifically defensively, with Fetty and JT on the floor together. It really helps the perimeter defense. And I know that sounds weird, but hear me out. Those two guys anchoring the post and allowing their athleticism to shine back there allows the guys on the perimeter to be a bit more aggressive and go for steals and not be as constructed and constrained and really having to stay in a lane, right? It allows them a little bit more freedom, and Texas Tech, in turn, has gotten better defensively. It's a wild concept, but they've gotten better defensively. So I would not be surprised if Fetty starts tomorrow if D5 is out. But they could go a multitude of ways if they really wanted to. I mean, this team has legitimately 3 guys on the bench where I don't think anybody's going to complain if they're starting, whether that's Fetty, KO, or Christian Anderson. I mean, but I think Christian Anderson, they really like him as kind of that 6th man off the bench, kind of that Chance McMillan vibe that the Red Raiders had last year for that team. Would you personally like to see Overton or Anderson start over Walton? Overton. Yeah, I'd rather see Overton. Overton is your best perimeter defender. He's frustrating at times. If you know anything about me here on the channel, I love myself some KO. I've been on him in terms of like really being high on his potential and his game since the moment that Texas Tech was linked to him in the portal when he decided to enter it from Drake. I think he has all Big 12 type potential down the road. You can tell that he's still trying to figure out his game a little bit, is not being a primary guy, but he's slowly getting involved in doing what he does best, which is defend, be athletic on the perimeter defensively, and then catch and shoot, right? He's better than Kerwin Walton at this, but I don't know how y'all feel. When Kerwin Walton dribbles, I panic a little bit. I'm not there with KO, but I don't enjoy him dribbling as much. He's more of a catch and shoot guy overall. But again, if you can get Kerwin going, you can get KO going and feel a little bit more confident. I truly believe sky's the limit for this team, because if those guys are confident, I don't know of a team in the country that can guard a lineup. If you have JT at the 5, that can guard a lineup of just say Christian Anderson, Chance McMillan, Kerwin Walton, and then KO or D5. Like, I don't know of a team in the country that can really guard that, specifically on the perimeter, with how many guys that can shoot close to 40% from 3, right? Now, is there a team out there in the country? Yeah, probably it's Auburn, but that's the closest one, and even they would have difficulty with that. So, yeah, that's a big deal for sure. Renee says, kind of wish this game was on the road. Tech always plays better on the road. No, you got to get back on track at home. Just think about that, though. Like, Tech has played, average at home at best? I think that might be a stretch, probably below average if we're being honest. And they are still having an opportunity to be a top 3 team in the Big 12 if they win this game against TCU. They played phenomenal. I mean, Grant McCasland, if you look back at his track record at every stop he's been, wherever it is, it does not matter. He wins on the road. He gets those guys ready to win on the road. And if you can win on the road, I promise you the home wins will come. I promise you. John says, I may be wrong, but wasn't Walton sick earlier in the year? Yeah, he was. Truthfully, I don't know the severity of the sickness or illness, I should say. But, yeah, he was under the weather for a little bit. You can tell that those 2 shots going in meant a lot to him. And, again, if you can get Kerwin Walton going, he doesn't have to be special or anything, right? Like, if Kerwin plays within his game it just elevates an already lethal shooting attack by the Red Raiders. So he's an added bonus at this point, right? So if he can be hitting his stride and, just be a serviceable starter, go in and play 15 to 20 minutes a night, I think that's exactly what you want from Kerwin Walton, and just be the guy. As soon as the ball touches your hands, don't dribble, just shoot it, right? The Klay Thompson, only 11 dribbles to score 50 some odd points type stuff. Don't dribble if you're Kerwin Walton. Catch and shoot, pump fake, go up, do what you're best at, right? Smooth Toad says Auburn is crazy. Duke continues to skate by in a weak conference. I think Duke is still really good. But I'll say this. If somebody has an argument to say that the best team in the country isn't the Auburn Tigers, I would love to hear it. I think Auburn is leaps and bounds the best team in the country. They are really effing good. And they're doing it without Broom, who came back this past weekend but came off the bench. I mean, he's disgusting. I mean, when you have, I believe they were talking about it on game day, the 4 guards for Auburn, Auburn uses 5 guards in their rotation, right? Coming into that game against Tennessee, their worst shooting guard was shooting 39% from 3. Disgusting type stuff. And not to mention they're absolutely legit on the defensive end. And I don't think Texas Tech is ever going to get to that legit phase defensively. But at the same time, like, if you want to know the absolute ceiling, and I don't think Texas Tech will reach it, but because don't hear what I'm not saying, the absolute ceiling for what Texas Tech and Grant McCasland is trying to build. And when I say that they won't get there, Tech won't get there, I mean this year specifically. I still think they're really good, but that's the blueprint. You want to be Auburn in what they're doing, right? You want to get that athletic big, and that's a really good player and a good post presence that's experienced and can just bully people down low, but is also a good passer, and just surround him by shooters. I mean, that's what you want, and that's what Texas Tech is doing, and they will continue to do that. But that's the blueprint right there. That is the blueprint for the Red Raiders, and I think that they're going to continue to build upon that in the years to come under Grant McCasland. We need to control Federico and JT Toppin's foul issues. Yeah, yeah, but also at the same time, that's just how it's going to be, right? They're aggressive down low. I'm actually okay. I obviously don't want them to get like 3 fouls or anything, but I would rather them be aggressive than how they were early on in the year, which was, I don't know. I know this word kind of gets people upset. They were soft early on at the beginning of the year. Fetty has finally realized, oh, I'm 7 feet tall. I don't have to bring the ball down. I can catch a rebound and just go straight up, right? And he's become a lot more physical. So is JT. I think that's an encouraging sign. Cooper Flagg is the best individual talent I have seen since Carmelo Anthony. Would not surprise me if Duke rides him to a natty. Yeah. And you said in college basketball. Yeah, and the crazy part is I think he turned 18 like a week ago. Dude is insane. I was having a debate with one of my buddies in the sense that outside of Victor, right? Victor Wembanyama, who I'm talking about. Would Cooper Flagg be the second best NBA prospect since LeBron James? And I think you could have an argument for it. I'm not saying I'd go there, but I think there'd be an argument for it because Victor's clearly the second. But is Cooper third? It's an interesting debate. But we're not here to debate Duke basketball. Auburn is scary because they got older guys. Duke's best players are freshmen. They tend to struggle in March Madness. Yeah, I think Duke is one of those teams that their talent will get them to the second weekend, but their inexperience won't allow them to go any further, if that makes sense. I think they can bully some of those teams early on and then go from there. Zion, hell no. Heck no. I knew Zion wasn't ever going to live up to the expectation, and this is coming from a guy that loves the city of Dallas. But when he said one of his favorite cities to visit in the NBA was Dallas, I was like, brother, I know what that means. But again, big news for Texas Tech. Overarching outside of doing the preview, this video was about D5. Graham McCasland says he will be a game-time decision after spraining his ankle late in the game against OK State. I would be surprised if he plays against TCU. tomorrow night. Again, that is me 1,000% speculating. Just being honest with you guys, I'd be surprised. You want to get him to as close as 100% for this 3-game stretch. That's a lot harder because he is your second best player, arguably your best player, right? So you got to get him back on track health-wise before he can even get back on track in terms of production. So that's kind of where we're going to wrap it up. Again, let me know in the comments how you liking the new setup here on the channel in terms of the rundown and everything like that. I mean, let me know if we need to switch it up. I tend to like it, but I want to hear from you guys. And, of course, again, other big news here on the channel. We won't be doing it for the TCU or Houston game, but we will for the Baylor game, starting to have post-game lives here on the channel. We'll see how that first one goes. I told y'all I'd give it a shot if we reached a certain like amount on a previous video. We got there. So we will try it out for the Baylor game next week in terms of an instant reaction live here on the channel to hear all of y'all's thoughts in the comments. And I will be reacting live as well, discussing everything Texas Tech men's basketball, hopefully after a win against Scott Drew in the Baylor Bears next weekend out in the 806. Okay, that's going to do it. One more time, if you haven't already, be sure to like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell to join the largest group of Texas Tech fans here on YouTube, over 11,500 strong. 100% free videos. This is the most interactive group of Texas Tech fans on YouTube. There's legitimately not a reason for you not to join the Back to 12 squad. So again, the easiest way to do so to stay in the know on all things Texas Tech men's basketball all year long and join the Back to 12 squad, simply like the video, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell. And as always, stay safe and Recom Tech.